Good to go for now. 10 seconds in.
All right, if everyone could just quiet down, we're going to go ahead and get started. But before we all start speaking, we're going to have Kimberly come up to chat with you all first.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Hood. I'm Chief Assistant County Counsel for YOLO County. So before you get started with your event this afternoon, I just wanted to, take it you can't hear me? Okay, so I'm Kimberly Hood, Chief Assistant County Counsel for YOLO County. So I'm here to give a brief overview of the ground rules for the library's meeting room. So the library makes this meeting room available to the public for various public events. And so in doing so, we have an obligation to make sure that we do so on an equitable basis, regardless of the beliefs or affiliations.
Microphone? Can't hear you.
What if we close the door?
Close the doors.
You have a microphone up there?
No, there's not.
You can all move forward in the chairs. Yeah, we're gonna close the door and we're looking for microphones.
Oh, this is a good test run for you.
Yeah, thank you. Move forward in the chairs.
Sorry, I'm just waiting for them to see if the doors close and maybe that will help. Let's see. Okay, so can you hear me a little better? I'm trying to project, but okay, so let me just start again then. So I'm Kimberly Hood, Chief Assistant County Counsel for YOLO County. And so before the event gets started, I just wanted to briefly go over the ground rules for the library meeting room. So the library makes the meeting room available for various public events. And in doing so, we have an obligation to make sure it's available on an equitable basis, regardless of the affiliations or viewpoints of the groups or individuals that request to use the room. And so this is not just part of the American Library Association's Bill of Rights, but it's also a protection that stems from the First Amendment's right to free speech. And so the First Amendment requires when we allow our library meeting room to be that. Is it on? Can you hear me?
He's working on it.
Microphone, but it don't work.
No. It's a prop.
Yeah.
You start over again?
She pulled out the Mr. Microphone. That's right.
I don't know how to move it to this. You know how that's.
Thank you. Do I need to go back to the beginning?
No.
How are you?
Keep it there.
Again, First Amendment right to free speech, right? And so the First Amendment requires the library to allow events without discrimination based on the content or viewpoint of the speakers. Today, for instance, you may hear the speakers express their own views and opinions regarding sex or gender, views that some may find to be misgendering or wrong or offensive, but the First Amendment allows them to express those views and to express those views without interruption or interference. And so as county library staff, we have an obligation in having this public space to make sure that the space we provide is is orderly and respectful, and that the event is allowed to occur without people disrupting the speakers. So we ask that you please respect those rules. We don't have to ask anyone to leave if it becomes disruption. And so again, we have updated our library policies to clarify First Amendment protections, and if you want to check those out, I encourage you to do so. If you have questions for the speakers about their events, I understand that they will are planning to have a question and answer period at the end. But again, please don't disrupt the speakers or interrupt them. And with that, I can go ahead and hand it over.
Did you say again who you are?
No. So with that, we will hand it over. Oh, he's serious.
She's the county attorney.
I'm sorry, I was kidding. Kimberly Hood, Chief Assistant County Counsel. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over. And again, thank you for your time and understanding. Thank you.
All right, well, hello everyone. It is good to be back here just 8 months later. Well, I am Sophia Lorey. If you haven't seen kind of the work I do along with Erin, Allie, Beth, just to stand up for truth here in California. And I work at California Family Council, so we testify a lot at the Capitol. We're watching the bills. Erin and myself have actually testified a couple times already on some crazy stuff that's erasing women. And I also host a podcast. It's called This Is a Woman Podcast. You can't really find the truth if you search what a woman is on Google anymore. So I wanted a podcast, a place where we speak the truth. And again, that's what we're going to be doing here today is simply speaking the truth, which goes down. So a little rundown of what we are doing today is we have Erin Friday. She will be speaking. She is an attorney, and you can see she's going to kind of walk down the brief history of California's erasure of women. Then we also have What is Sex? Men competing in women's sports, and an update on Title IX. We'll have Kim Jones hop on via Zoom, I believe. And then the genetic deltas between XX and XY in the sports of cycling will be Rich Wharton. He is a cycling coach. We are going to go through the CIF Gender Inclusivity Toolkit. If you don't know what CIF is, it's the governing body of high school sports here in California. That will be by everyone's favorite, Beth Bourne. And then we will talk about the real life consequences of replacing biology with ideology with Allie, Snyder. And then we'll have some. And then at the end, we will have time for some Q&A. We'll have everyone line up there. We'll go over the rules for that again once we get there. But it really is a time for question and answers. So make sure when you come up, you end with a question. But with that, why am I here speaking on this issue? Well, I grew up playing soccer. And I began playing soccer around the age of 4. I then started to realize this is something I love, this is something I'm passionate about, and this is something I want to pursue at a higher level than just at the local community soccer teams. I eventually played on some of the highest level club teams in Southern California. I was a 4-year CIF varsity player. 3 of those years I was a captain. And then I went on to play college soccer in Southern California at Vanguard University. And at 10 years old, my dream was simply to be a college athlete. If you asked me at 10 years old, what do you want to do when you grow up? I didn't say, oh, I want to be a teacher or a nurse or a dentist or a singer. I wanted to be a college soccer player. It was that simple. Also, a pretty simple dream that I knew I could accomplish. I had to work hard. I had to make sure my parents were on board because I, at 10 years old, couldn't drive myself to practices. They had to get me there. And I knew if I worked hard, I would be able to accomplish that dream. That dream eventually became true, like I stated earlier. At 18 years old, I began playing college soccer. That actually helped pay for a lot of my college. And so, again, sports brings so much into life. One of those is it helps pay for that higher education. So I got to accomplish that dream. Current 10-year-old girls do not have the ability to accomplish that same dream. Is it because they don't work as hard as I did at 10? No. It's simply because now boys are playing in girls' sports. Men are playing women's sports. So when this 10-year-old has a dream, how do we expect her to work hard enough to be faster or stronger than a man? Because again, it comes down to truth. We know biologically that males are faster and stronger than females. Now we have the dangers of that. Okay, say if a 10-year-old girl wants to keep working harder, even though she realizes there's all these boys coming into women's sports, girls' sports. What happens when she gets injured on the field? What happens when she loses her starting spot? Is that 10-year-old girl going to want to keep playing and accomplish her dream, or is she going to quit? Because she now has men in her locker rooms. She now has boys naked in her locker rooms. And that is truly what we are seeing happen in society now. It's not just a one-off thing. It's not just happened once or twice. We are seeing it happen up and down the state, up and down the entire country. We are seeing girls being injured. We saw Peyton McNabb, high school volleyball player. had a male spike the volleyball down to her face so hard. It's been almost 2 years. She's still partially paralyzed on the right side of her face. She didn't get to play college sports. She was concussed. She missed a lot of her senior year. It led to anxiety and depression. That is what is happening. So it's not just dreams being erased, and that should be enough to call this whole craziness and stop it. Girls are being injured. Girls that have been sexually assaulted are getting stuck in bathrooms and locker rooms with males. So again, you're going to hear a lot about how this started, what CIF is doing. Beth again is going to dive into the CIF and the Gender Inclusivity Toolkit. Something that I just think is extremely important from that is I went through and I read that toolkit. Like I said earlier, I was a 4-year varsity player, 3 of those years being a captain. That means when I was a captain at 15 years old, there was some senior girls on the team that were 18, legally adults. I'm reading through the toolkit and it says, what do you do if there is a boy who's now playing on the girls' team and you need to make sure they feel acclimated? As a coach, how do you handle that? In the toolkit, it says, well, it's the job of the captain to make sure these boys and men feel acclimated on the girls' team, on the girls' locker rooms, taking the other girls' spots on the team. And when I stopped and read that, I realized, oh, thank God this didn't happen to me. Because that would have meant if there was a man, an 18-year-old senior man, that wanted to play on the girls' soccer team when I was in high school, when I was a captain my sophomore year, I, as a 15-year-old, would have had to make sure that man, completely naked, exposing genitalia, felt comfortable in the women's locker room, not the girls. It would have been my job as a 15-year-old to make sure that man felt comfortable. And that is, again, where we have gotten. This is what we're seeing happen day after day after day. Now college. I was kind of just thinking about, what am I going to talk to you guys about my college soccer experience, because I didn't have to play against a man. I'm the lucky one. I didn't have to experience that. And then I thought, where are we as a society that I'm saying I'm a lucky female for not having to play against a male on the women's soccer team? How have we gotten here as a society? I shouldn't be saying I'm the lucky one. I should just be saying that's normal. That's common sense. That doesn't happen. But when I played college soccer my freshman year, our coach was also the men's coach. We all had to do fitness tests right when we got back from summer. We had the same fitness test because we had the same coach, but the men had to get faster times and better scores. Is that because the coach just thought they worked harder than us? Because he thought they trained a little more over summer? Because he just expected more out of them? No, it goes down to the fact that biologically, males and females are different, and that is why we have these separated sports. Another example of that is when I was in my junior year of college soccer. I was in the best shape I was in. I was getting second or first on all the fitness tests out of 25, 26 other college soccer players. I was training daily. This was during COVID, so I was outside running on my own, 4 to 6 miles at a 6-minute pace every day, then doing fitness tests, doing weights with the little dumbbells I had in my backyard because everything was shut down. My 15-year-old brothers at the time, they also played soccer. Their soccer was also completely shut down. What did they do? They played video games, they hung out inside, they ate a lot of junk food. So I said, okay, it's time for you boys to come out here and do these fitness tests with me, because who knows when your soccer is going to start back up. So they come out, beat me on every single one. How did you guys beat me on every single one? I'm beating 25 other college soccer players, other girls. I'm out here training every single day, and you guys sit inside all day and you're still faster than me? Again, it comes down to that as the biological truth that males and females are different, and we're going to dive into that. But that is a little bit about my story and why I'm passionate, because every single 10-year-old girl, your daughters and your granddaughters, deserve the right to achieve their dreams. And this state and this country is currently taking away that right, and we need to do all we can to reverse it and stop it because if not, it's just going to keep getting worse. So that's my story, but next is Erin Friday.
Good afternoon. Before I get started, I just wanted to apprise everyone about the lawsuit that we had filed based on our last talk where the library shut us down because they violated, we called men. And so we warned them, we told them that they were violating our First Amendment rights and that we would sue, and we did. And so the result of that lawsuit is that, well, they paid our attorney's fees, and I want to thank our attorneys. We had 2 sets of attorneys. We actually had probably 5 different law firms reach out to us within days because this was such an easy case, right? Because First Amendment, we have the right to say whatever we want in a public space as long as we're not inciting violence. So that lawsuit, we have essentially settled. All of us who were speakers, we have won a little cash. That's not the big win though. The big win is that they had to change their policies and to ensure that First Amendment is still alive and well in our public institutions, because America doesn't exist really without the First Amendment. It's the First Amendment for a reason. It's the most important, that we can speak, and that's how we learn and that's how we grow. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we got here. To understand how we got to a place where males who believe that they are women participate in sports now as girls, we have to go back 30 years. This was in the making 30 years. This is Sheila Cool. In 1994, Sheila Cool, who was the first openly gay lawmaker, was elected to the California legislature. I'm a lefty. I voted for same-sex marriage. So had I been paying attention, I would have been cheering her on. Sheila Cool was also cool, like her name, sort of. She was a Hollywood star. She was the plain smart girl in Dobie Gillis. Now I'm aging myself because I actually did watch it. And she actually was, or Velma from Scooby-Doo was based on her. She went to Harvard Law, so very smart, and she began her legal career representing domestic violence victims. She started the California Women's Law Center. So again, I would have emulated her. I would have celebrated this woman. She obviously knew the difference between men and women because she worked in a domestic violence. Now, more than 442,000 women in the US in 2022 have been sexually abused. 98% of them at the hands of males. So when we were talking about placing men in women's sacred spaces, we have to keep this stat in mind. Sheila, she is the mother of the erasure of women in California. Yep, that woman stabbed her own in the back. In 1999, Sheila authored a bill called California Safety and Violence Prevention Act of 2000. That name alone, we would have probably been celebrating. But that bill was the beginning of the end for safeguards for females. With that marquee bill, Sheila expanded discrimination laws into the education code. She did it under the rubric of no discrimination based on sex, religion, race, national origin, all things that we could get behind. Because this is how it's done. It's called forced teaming, taking a good aspect of a bill and then throwing in a bad aspect. And then when you're testifying about this bill, only talk about the good stuff. The problem that she was claiming that she was solving was that gay kids were dropping out of school because of harassment. And then, of course, she threw in the holy grail, suicide. Does this sound familiar? 30 years ago, they were using the suicide. She claimed that her bill would stop young gay kids from killing themselves. But the bill, of course, did no such thing. Sheila was shrewd and cunning. She knew incrementalism well. You take a bite here, and a bite there, and a bite there, and then the cake is gone. She took her first bite in 1999. Her ultimate goal was to change the definition of sex to mean gender identity, changing biological, immutable reality to be a fluid belief that could change at a moment's notice. Following her student safety bill, she wrote a law that changed the penal code. She added gender identity into the list of hate crimes. Again, no one wants anyone injured, harmed because of their gender identity. So, good bill. But was it? This is how sex got erased. The brilliance of her bill was that her change in the criminal code automatically changed the education code, because the education code was based on the criminal code. Very shrewd woman. So in the blink of an eye, she expanded gender identity and pushed it into our schools. She used teenage suicide again as the linchpin. This bill must pass or the youth will commit suicide. She stated that suicide is the third leading cause of death for youth. Did her bill stop suicide? It's now the second leading cause of kids. For children ages of 10 to 14, the suicide rates have increased 42%. For those 15 to 24, it has increased 10% and it's climbing. Those are old numbers. So no, it was a lie. This was not preventing suicide. This was maybe increasing suicide. So if she really cared about stopping suicide, she would have been passing laws that help kids accept their perfectly imperfect natural bodies. She would have celebrated every type of female and male, letting them know that there's no way to change sex, that being a masculine female was cool, just like her, or being a feminine male was just A-okay. But instead, she codified the big lie that people can change sex, that children could be born wrong, and that to avoid suicide, people need to become perpetual medical patients, spending a lifetime on cancer-causing synthetic hormones and shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars to big pharma and the medical complex. One trans-identified kid is worth about $1 million to the white man at the top. Some might call him the oppressor. In 2007, Sheila passed another whammy of a law, which added gender to more sections of the education code and pushed it into the curriculum, forcing it to be taught. Again, she hid this bill with forced teaming, the be kind trope. This is how it's done, folks. You mix a good idea with a harmful idea and you bury it. In this bill, she used the California Healthy Kids Survey and linked her bill again to academic risk, health, and safety. She actually said that students would increase academically if they learned about gender and sex were melded together. But of course, that was a lie too, because currently in California, I think we're the 40th in education. 48? Okay. Only 1/3 of California public school students are proficient in math, and fewer than 50% are proficient in English. So did any of her bills help our academics? No. Our academics in the state of California are in the toilet. And we pay in taxes, I think, $23,000 per student. And our kids are graduating and they can't read. So one more comment about Sheila. Sorry, I'm picking on her. She's now under investigation for corruption, for using her position as the LA County Supervisor for illegally using city funds to help out her friends. But Sheila has really powerful friends, and they're protecting her. The night before the sting operation, she was forewarned, giving her time to dump the evidence. The sheriff's office was then removed from the case and replaced with her pal and my pal, Attorney General Rob Bonta. That was in 2022. I keep Googling to see what's going on with that case and I come up empty. Why? Because this little corruption case is quietly disappearing. Because she will continue to line her pockets, because after all, the trans movement is a cash cow for anyone in the game. But Sheila didn't remove or erase women on her own. In 2011, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, which is a misnomer, found their perfect plaintiff. This young girl believed that she was a boy. And her dad got upset that his daughter had to use the nurse's bathroom to change. And her dad got upset because his daughter had to sleep in his cabin in an overnight outing instead of the biological boy's cabin. This bears repeating. Her father wanted his biological daughter to spend the night with high school males. What could possibly go wrong? But that was the lawsuit. And of course they picked a female. This was to keep the crowds down, because if they had chosen a male and were fighting at first to get males into girl spaces, there would have been pitchforks. But because it was a girl, there was not as much as an uproar. So a Title IX claim ensued, and instead of litigating the case, the high school at issue entered into a settlement and agreed to change the school policies to give this young female free range to place herself in danger by using male facilities. This high school is the same high school in Southern California, for those of you who know, Abigail Martinez. That's where Abigail Martinez went to school. Abigail Martinez was taken from her loving mother, because the mother would not transition the child. Abigail Martinez's daughter ended up being taken from the mother. No claim of abuse was ever prosecuted against the mother, and this young woman, in excruciating pain, because testosterone in those doses doesn't belong in a female body. It causes bone pain, atrophy, mental health issues, and this young woman stood in front of a train. And this all came out of this, ACLU lawsuit. So next came up Tom Amiano, and he was an openly gay assembly member from San Francisco. He authored AB 1266, which Governor Brown enacted in 2013, that then permitted any student to play on any sports team based on their mere belief, and obviously use any bathroom based on their belief. At the same time, the California Interscholastic Federation, the CIF, came out with their new rules letting athletes choose the sports team based on their gender identity. One might say that this was perfectly orchestrated. all these three things happening at the same time, the perfect storm to put females back in their places, because that's what they did. They wanted to put us back in our places and make the desires and feelings of men supreme. And that's how we arrived to a place where females must not only give up their spots on sports teams, hand over their scholarships, endure the male gaze in their bathrooms, and celebrate losing to male bodies that are on the whole stronger and faster than girls. To end, these policies are not kind or inclusive to the male athletes either. Pretending that they can actually be females is cruel to them. By doing so, they are affirming that these males, that there's everything wrong with them, that they were born wrong, and that they are not good enough to be male. So I have sympathy for these boys who are playing as girls on these teams, because people are lying to them, and they're getting harmed too, just like the females. So I end with that, and I hope that as we see our nation changing, because it's changing, state after state after state is coming back to biological reality. And here in California, we are asking the people to return to biological reality. If you want to know how and haven't signed, then come see me afterwards. But this will change. This will change. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so we've got a really special guest who's going to be coming on right now. This is Kim Jones. She's the co-founder of Icons. I had the pleasure of going to Denver a few months ago and attending their conference, and it's just the most amazing group. So Kim, I'll let you go ahead and start.
We're on mute, so
Oh.
unmute us and let her know.
It's muted for.
There you go.
Okay, I'm on. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kim Jones, and I'm the co-founder of Icons, the Independent Council on Women's Sport. I'm a former Stanford All-American tennis player and a U.S. national team member. Today, I work with women all over the world, protecting women's sports and the sex-based rights of female athletes. My job this afternoon should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to lay out the clear arguments why women and girls need and deserve a sex-separated category in sport. And this opening slide is a great quote from one of the athletes that works with us, who has used sport to overcome some incredible obstacles and sexism in her life. So for Bourne, this fight is about whether women deserve to be treated fairly or not. Because if we don't deserve to be treated fairly, even in the one place where fairness is supposed to be ensured and upheld, what hope do we have everywhere else where women are being treated poorly and people make excuses like that's our place and we just need to learn how to take it? So sex is real. It's defined by gametes, and that's true in all mammals. Sex is the fundamental concept of life. It's why each of you are here, living and breathing. Human life, mammalian life, does not perpetuate, does not continue without sex. Understanding this is the foundation of our ability to study life and human development. There is no system of the body not impacted by this from utero. There's no reboot, no undo, and no human can change sex. The effects of sex are permanent, and everyone is either male or female, even those with rare chromosomal or developmental abnormalities. Male bodies develop around the production of sperm, even if no sperm are ever produced. Female bodies develop around the production of ova, even if no ova are ever produced. Every male will have a mini puberty in utero and in infancy, as well as a puberty in adolescence. It's why boys are both heavier and taller than girls on average, even as infants, and why performance differences are between males and females are evident as early as they can be measured. So on this slide, we have some data sources for this. USA Swimming Motivational Time Standards are an aggregate of all the historical top swim times, literally everyone that has a recorded time. And those create the standards of competition levels. It should be noted that boys 10 and under records and time standards are faster than girls in the United States, despite girls making up over 60% of the youth enrollment. It's almost 2 to 1 in favor of the girls for sheer numbers. With this, one would expect to find more exceptional outliers in the larger group of girls, but this isn't true. And the performance of boys is also far more congregated at the top times. And that means that more boys perform near the top male performers, while the girls' times drop off faster. There's more separation between them. This trend is consistent. The boys are faster at every age and every stroke, almost without exception. Data from age group records and championships in USA Track and Field also shows significant male advantage, even for each event at 8 and under. The presidential fitness tests available for each age and across millions of students confirm the percentile performance differences. Boys are faster and stronger as young as we record. Similarly, there have been studies done on children all over the world documenting male-female performance differences consistently, even in the toddler ages. This performance difference is not socialization or access. It is not simply a matter of belief. Basically, these early testosterone bouts for baby boys, combined with the genetic encoding and a separate active development path for females, results in thousands of genetically expressed differences between males and females, and these affect every system of the body. As you can see in this list, it's long, and there are actually over 6,000 that we know of at this time, and probably growing. The result of sex is that men and women are built differently in almost every way, and its impacts are enormous for women across the globe and across all cultures. It's expressed in everything from lean body mass and strength, speed, obviously reproductive impacts, bone structure, literally thousands of differences. A measurable output example of this is the fact that a man's punch is over 160% stronger than that of a woman. And here are a few more measurable performance differences shown in this figure from a recent paper. These sex differences mean that men hold the physical and sexual power over women in society. And with this power, a culture either chooses to celebrate and respect women, or it chooses to subjugate women. Sport is a microcosm of society. And women's sport is a reflection of how we value women in society. The fundamental question that we are asking right now is, do women and girls deserve access to fair sport? The answer is a yes or no. We create sports categories for maximum inclusion. They exist across age, in some sports weight, and para categories for the para athletes, and across all of those sex. Because without this category, women largely disappear from sport. So this slide that you're looking at shows the performance difference of the fastest women in the world compared to men and boys in a single year in both the 100 and 800 meters. The green dots there are the fastest female athletes in the world. The thousands of blue, yellow, and red are men and young boys. Female players are not in the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NHL, not because women are not training hard enough or because of socialization. Usain Bolt is not faster than FloJo because FloJo didn't try hard enough. Women work from a different biological basis. They are amazing in their own right, and their abilities should never be measured by a male standard. This has all become very clear to the public in recent years. In sports, as we see male athletes demanding to compete against women. I had a front row seat when my daughter faced Leah Thomas, I saw the ramifications for my daughter and her peers. I saw the tears and I saw the struggles, and I watched as strong, confident women became frightened, quiet, and stopped believing that they could depend on their leaders to protect them. The women were silenced, told to ignore their instinctive reaction to injustice, fear, and discomfort. They were emotionally blackmailed and told that the feelings and well-being of a man were more important than their own, that his life depended upon their concession. This emotional blackmail is no different than the age-old threat that women have always faced when trying to stand up for themselves or leave abuse. If you leave, I will kill myself. Telling women that they are responsible for carrying the mental health burdens of another is wrong in every sense of the word. Every week I see firsthand what happens when we put our women and girls through this. The stories, the numbers, and the impacts are heartbreaking, and they are staggering in volume. When they reach out to us, women are relieved to finally be able to speak freely and share their experiences. In most instances, women, parents, families, and even whole professional and collegiate teams contact us in tears, wondering why no one is doing anything to stop the painful situations they are facing or watching unfold around them. They speak of getting physically sick, losing weight, finding it difficult to focus and sleep, anger, depression, and fear. They speak of quitting, getting injuries, or retiring early, and some have even at the highest levels. The younger athletes consider changing sports entirely to try to escape the injustice, and some of them quit as well. As this has become more visible, we have seen public support for female athletes only grow. When we tell our girls that they are more valuable as tools of affirmation or shields of protection for men, when we tell women that their accomplishments, their desire to win, their hard work, and their feelings need to be set aside to make someone else feel better, we damage them psychologically. This is abuse of women. Sex-based categories in competitive sport have been a huge part of women's success in overcoming discrimination. It's no surprise that in the last 50 years, the rise of women's sports has coincided with the rise of women's voices, status, legal protections, and contributions. A female athlete, a female champion, is a symbol of power, an inspiration, and a source of strength. A female athlete is a chance for women and girls to see their potential, to know that they are worthy of reward and recognition, and we cannot strip that away. Competition is how we find our physical limits. It's an invitation to bring your absolute personal best and match it with the personal best of others in a fair and clean contest. Bringing a body forward to compete that is intentionally enhanced or hindered is not in the spirit of that ethos. The question governing bodies of sport are asking as they try to make guidelines to include male athletes in the female category is just how much do we need to impair male performance to be equated to that of women? This experiment is not empowering for women. It is damaging. It is deeply misogynistic and demeaning. We are not small or encumbered male bodies. We are female. We should not have to fight for representation and reward physically against biology and development that is male. For leaders to point to trying to achieve a level playing field for women by removing competitive advantage from males while women work decades to maximize their own is incredibly dismissive of women. There is no way to undo male development. There is no way to put a male through female development and female puberty. The message to female athletes right now is never mind, you are only women, so fairness doesn't matter. Be good, be kind, be inclusive. Women and society at large are railing against this. We react instinctively to visible injustice. The hundreds of the people we counsel with have co-written and put their names to legal briefs and published documents. Please listen to this example. As athletes, coaches, and parents of female athletes, we are hurt and shamed that people in power do not find female athletes important enough to speak up for. We are left to cry and sink into depression on our own as we embrace our new understanding of girls' and women's place in the world. We are left with the shame of not being able to compete physically with a male who wants our place. The shame that laws barring discrimination on the basis of sex have not been enough. The shame of losing while others cheered in a competition with no integrity. The shame of seeing males so easily take over that which was established for us. The shame of having to speak out for something so plainly obvious. And the shame of having been silent, even if just for a moment, while we suffered or watched other women suffer. Not one more female athlete should go through this. Not one more person should have to watch a woman sidelined for a male who is deemed more important than her fair and equal chance. We are not just haunted by our memories and experiences. When these male athletes take our place, we are forced to reckon with a public record that condones and historically celebrates our abuse. This cannot be the legacy we leave for women and girls, for the millions of human beings who are born female. The end of the excerpt. So I am frequently asked, what is fairness? If a female athlete beats a male athlete, how can you possibly say the competition wasn't fair? Or if the males competing don't always win, doesn't that show it's fair? What is an unfair advantage? First and foremost, advantage is not determined by finish. If a 10-year-old beats a 30-year-old, the 30-year-old still has a massive advantage with a fully mature and developed body. And yes, this happens. I was this 10-year-old. The results simply show that the 30-year-old did not have enough of an advantage to compensate for the skill, training, and talent of the 10-year-old. If a clean athlete beats a doped athlete, it doesn't mean the doped athlete didn't have an unfair advantage. And yes, this happens. It means that the use of drugs was not enough to surpass the natural abilities of the clean athlete. If a para-athlete beats an able-bodied athlete, it doesn't mean the able-bodied athlete doesn't have an unfair advantage. And again, yes, this happens. It means that the skill, talent, and training of the para-athlete is so much greater than the able-bodied athlete, they win in spite of a disadvantage. When a female athlete beats a male athlete, it means the male athlete's baseline abilities are so much lower than the females that male development and physiology, worth 10 to 60%, were not enough of an advantage to win. It is always amazing when an athlete competes up and they're able to overcome the known advantages of competitors. For example, when a youth makes an Olympic team. Rules prevent competing down, where the known advantages render results meaningless. In all of these cases, except one. Men and boys have been granted special permission to compete against women and girls in instances where male beliefs and male feelings are more important than recognizing female skill, talent, training, and drive. There's a lot of talk about how we can make it fair for women if pharmaceuticals hamper the performance of males or stop their development. But consider, when we are talking about the eligibility of athletes for any given category, is it fair for a mature adult to compete with children if they are sick, if they are short, if they hamstring themselves, if they medicate? Is it fair for a doped athlete to compete against clean athletes if they limit their training? They aren't naturally that strong, they don't have access to great coaching, or simply aren't as talented. Is it fair for able-bodied athletes to compete in para events if they're given a handicap, if they medicate to slow down? There are a few things that we know about hormones and the human body. Androgens do not make a woman remotely competitive with men, and we know this from decades of women fed these drugs to win Olympic medals. Testosterone suppression and estrogen do not erase male development and male advantage. We know a male never becomes female. We know the competition isn't fair. But even if it did mitigate male advantage, even if it could, do we see women as the equivalent of a hamstrung and artificially limited male? Do we decide that males get the podium for men and also for women? What are we rewarding? We don't allow the changing of category or the use of performance-enhancing drugs in any of these other instances because we recognize the value of seeing youth compete cleanly and fairly, safely. We recognize the value of athletes, our para-athletes having a space to celebrate their accomplishments. So where does this leave women and girls? Why are we the exception? What did that are supporting this lawsuit at takeontheNCAA.com. We have to figure out a way to secure a future for our women and girls that does not force them back into accepting a role where injustice is their guarantee if they are born female. Thank you.
Got it. Yep. Well, it was pretty serious. So my lecture is going to be a little bit more brief, and it's also it's going to have some levity in it as well. My name is Richard Wharton, and I am a cycling coach. I was with USA Cycling up until 2018 when I left for other reasons. And this is just one more, nail in the coffin when I realized what was going on in my sport as regards to the shrinking base of boys, girls, men and women, and then the added pressure that was being placed on girls and women because of this gender acceptance requirements. My presentation is titled Watts per kilogram because in my sport, since about 1985, we have been able to measure the physical output of our performance in terms of wattage. And we do it on a relative basis when we look at body weight based on kilograms. I'm going to put the mic down actually. And I want everybody to put your hands out in front of you. Give me the double Fonzie thumbs up. All right? Now, put one thumb down, pick your thumb. When we use energy, we generate power. When we generate power, we go down the road, right? So humans are about 20 to 25% efficient, but bicycles are 92 to 96% efficient. So one pedal stroke will take you 800 yards down the road, and you're in Davis. This is the epicenter of it all, folks. Lucky guys, lucky gals. Now, what is power? Power is measured in light bulbs, okay? How many of you did that science project back in the high school days where you get up there and go? Now, I had a GIF of this whole thing, but basically, anybody remember Gilligan's Island? We got any of you millennials or Zers? Go watch it on TV Land. It's clean fun. And this is gender equity, okay? Because we've got Marianne and Ginger there, but we've got the Skipper and Gilligan, okay? And what they're doing is they're using energy in the form of calories, and they're generating power so that there's the generator right there. So the professor can tap, tap, tap on his Morse code machine and try to get them off the freaking island. Now, if it were me, I might not want to get off the island, but that's another reason. And of course, every once in a while, if you are Thurston Howell III and Lovey, now they're not in this image, you know, they get a little hot in the afternoon and, you know, afternoon cocktail hour, things like that. So here's the Skipper coaching Gilligan, and that is a turbofan made out of palm fronds. So they had to get their breeze on, that kind of thing. Just remember, energy, power, velocity, okay? Now, this is another version of the same chart that was just shown to you all from the icons presentation, but I'm going to narrow it down to two little things. We've got lung capacity and we've got heart. Now remember, I've talked about physics, and right here, I've got a spirometer, all right? I've even got some alcohol wipes if you want to play with it, okay? And I challenge any genetic, biological, physiological male to go up against any genetic, biological, physiological female and compare your lung capacity. Okay? It's not even close. This is just one example. But wait, there's more. I am a total technical nerd. I actually got published way back in 2003. The title of my book is Watts per Kilo. Imagine that. And still available on Amazon, and it sells about a book a year. All proceeds go to my wife. That's another story. But this is an image that I took on a certain piece of software that I'm trying to develop and sell, but it measures your ECG. All right? This is V1, V2, which is right here. Okay, now, let me ask you all. We're in Sacramento area. Has anybody ever crossed paths with Sally Edwards? Does that name ring anybody's bells? Sally Edwards was the pioneer of heart rate training way back in the day, and she's still here. And her office is on the street where all the auto dealerships are, and I love her to death. And she wanted me to come work here for her in 2017, and when I got here in 2022, the job was gone. Anyway. Long story short, this is my heart rate. This is my wife's ECG heart rate. If you know anything about cardiovascular fitness, what you realize is that millivolts and millimeters for the left ventricle, which is the ventricle that squeezes fresh oxygen out into the body, for aerobic activity is, in my opinion, the most important of the 4 chambers. Anecdote. On August the 8th, I was teaching a remote class. I have a virtual training studio. One of my clients said, I don't feel good. We were doing a low intensity ride. 45 minutes later, I get a call from his wife. He's had a major heart attack. This is the second time I've had to deal with somebody having a heart attack on me. First time, had to do the crunch on the floor, saved his life. He walked to the MICU, and they said, your left ventricle is what saved your life. Okay? Now, here's the difference. My left ventricle, as a genetic, biological, physiological male, is almost 2.5 millivolts. My wife's, it's a little bit obscure. It's actually closer to 0.5, so just mentally shift it up. Who won 3 state championships? Not me. It wasn't me. Now, you've seen this chart before. It's been used for about 25 years. It actually is obsolete at the top row because of blood doping. Now we think they're doing other vector doping. And we've also just broken records as people pay hyper attention to diet, hydration, ketones, you name it. It's kind of sick, the obsession levels that we go to. But here's what I want you to remember. Energy and power. So if you're a recreational cyclist, again, here we are in the epicenter of recreational cycling. You've got more bike lanes per linear mile than just about anywhere in the United States. You go to the you go to the local bike shop, you buy a bike, and you start pedaling, and you get where you need to go, and then you get to the library, and then you get back, and you go to the grocery store, you get to come back. Beth's been involved in this. You're going to generate about 2 to 3 watts per kilo over 5 minutes and or threshold. Now, what is threshold? Threshold is basically the intensity at which your body becomes less efficient at processing energy. It's that simple. Okay, you basically switch energy systems and start basically paying a taxed penalty internally. So here we are at 3 watts per kilo. If you're a male, it puts you at a nice little area, but look at the same-ish number for the female. She's already in a competitive zone if she ever chose to pin a number on her back and turn a crank in anger. If you are just a lightweight recreational cyclist, you can see that you already have, if I was at 2.22, it would already be there. All right? Now, take a look at these numbers. This is me right now. I am generating about 4 watts per kilo. And if I were to have my license again and start competing, it would put me in what I would call regionally proficient category. I would not necessarily be winning, but I would have the potential to be winning an amateur bike race. Got it? But 4 watts per kilo puts you in the female elite category. All right, let's look at 5 minutes. 5 minutes is akin to, did you see on the previous chart, they were talking about VO2 max? Well, I've got one of those apparatuses. It's about $8,000. And let me tell you, I've never seen a woman with a 75 VO2 max. They do exist, but it's a very rare individual. So here we are at 5 watts per kilo. Look at what happens. They're at the very top of category 1. Okay, so 4 watts per kilo puts you in the amateur ranks for a male. 4 watts per kilo for a female puts you in the elite status. What does that get you? This is a fast photo, 1/10,000th of a frame stop. That is my wife, and that is her 3rd state championship. Okay, she won 3 state championships in about 5 years, remember her ECG showed that she had a smaller heart with less output. Now, this is not cycling. I pulled this yesterday off of a study that was released in September of 2023. And what it shows is running data that was compiled amongst children ages 7 to 18. Well, here's puberty, and at every single category, we get the delta to grow. all right? And the other sad fact is that the blue dots for male youth are always gently above the velocity of the females, okay? And again, I'm just stating facts here, folks. I'm not providing any opinions. All right, now let's get into something that I really am excited about sharing. This is my data, and I'm going to compare my data to male to female transgendered athletes because they have provided it. This is a metric system for power called XERT, Exert. I was an early adopter. It does not have some of the numbers of participants as some of the larger mediums do, but at the same time, they are much, much, much more dedicated, and they have been loading that data up since about 2016. Well, this was my data on Thursday morning. My threshold, that area where I become less efficient, is at about 284 watts. If I were to go and climb a 5-minute hill and expire at the end, and I'm not talking about just exhaustion, I'm talking about John Henry and his hammer. Remember that little, folk tale? Mm-hmm. All right. I would be able to generate 346 watts over 5 minutes before they buried me. Okay. Now, the top of the bell curve is 298 watts. The 90th percentile is 373 watts. That puts me, this is for people in the 10-year category between 50 and 59. But I was playing around with this. I've got clients on this platform. And I made one change. Anybody see it?
Made yourself a female.
Made myself a female. So I changed this category. Now here's the caveat. My sport hates women. I have tried for 31 years as a professional cycling coach to bring more women into the sport. And at one point it was as bad as 9-to-1 male to female ratio. We think it's now a 1-to-3 ratio, but USA Cycling is about to go under and they don't provide the data. But here's what happens. I go from 80% to the 98th percentile, and that's enough to make a massive change in results. So I thought, well, I wonder what's going on. I'm kind of a middle-aged guy. I'm 53, I'm about 254, I got the gray hair going. My testosterone's on the wane. I got to make sure that I don't do stuff so that they pop me if they ever go and test. So let's include women 40 plus. Let's add another 15 years to the window. It only changes 2%. Anecdotally, about 5 years ago, I was actually doing a race that was an all-comers race with my wife. Both of us were in really good shape. This was down in Texas. It was highly humid. And not only did the two of us drop everybody in the event, I ended up dropping her and not knowing it. I circled back 2 miles, picked her up, and we both set the record on a metric called Strava. And she was like, "Oh, so mad at you until you turned around." Now, I didn't even realize this existed. This company is Canadian. I'm sure they're being inclusive. I'm sure they mean well. But I want you to look specifically at what happens when you add a third category. Let's go back and let's go forward. We go from 98, 96 percentile to 70 percentile. If I were to compete against identified male to female transgendered athletes, I would be getting my butt kicked. Why? I'll leave it up to you. I could say something, but I would get kicked out. All right, now, where do women win? Where do women win? Has anybody heard of Amanda Coker? All right, Amanda Coker was riding with her father, I believe in North Carolina, when a motorist struck herself and her father from behind, and she suffered a traumatic brain injury. Okay? And it was awful. Well, she had to take a semester off of school, and I think she was at Brevard, I'm not 100% sure. But she rode herself compulsively out of a TBI. and she is the world record holder for the most miles covered in 1 year and the fastest amount of time to reach 100,000 miles. Her average distance is 200 some odd miles per day. And here's the stat they don't tell you. We were following her. She got faster every month. She's great. She's a wonderful athlete. And now she's racing for Team 2024, which is a team that is run by a comrade of mine. Now, this is the heartbreaker right here. You saw this individual crying in the icons slide. This is Hannah Aronson. And this is her press release after she was, how best to say this, she was outcompeted by a genetic, biological, physiological male who happened to psychologically identify as a female. She also barely won against a biological, physiological, genetic male who psychologically identifies as a female. And she was so broken. She had dedicated her entire junior career and her entire collegiate career to becoming, this is a niche of my sport called cyclocross. It's very fun, it's very dirty, it's about a 1 hour event. It's kind of it's a neat little deal. It requires a lot of physiological work. But she quit, and we'll never see her again. And that's the biggest heartbreak of all. So I know I've gone over my time. I'll leave this up here. I'll let you read it. But I am available for Q&A. And of course, if anybody wants to pass around the spirometer during a break or anything like that, let me know. And I'll be glad to prove you wrong. So anyway, thank you for your time and attention.
Hi, my name is Beth. I feel like I'm at a school board meeting. I am the chair for Moms for Liberty, fantastic group. I'm also a parent with Our Duty. We're parents, sorry. I'll get to that later. Okay, I am here today because I want to talk to you a little bit about what's in our curriculum. And also what's in our library books, CIF's Gender Inclusive Toolkit, and how these policies impact girls in high school. So I've done a lot of research. I probably submitted 30 public records requests. I did not know this, but in 2018, the public schools here in California were completely immersed in this gender ideology. It starts in kindergarten. You can see the picture books I have in the back here. They're the same books that I checked out of the library. This is the genderbread person. This is one of the first images that kids start to see in their health and their science classes starting about 5th grade. It tells kids that your identity, your gender identity, is something in your brain, and that your biological sex is something in your body parts. And that your gender identity is somewhere between womanness and manness. Your expression is all based on, aggressive sex stereotypes of what your preferences might be, what kind of toys you play with, how you like to dress, your demeanor. And then it says, yes, your biological sex, you can see on the gingerbread. It tells kids that, you could be all these different things, that the doctor assigns your birth. They make mistakes. Your brain might have a different gender than, your body parts. So they start really young confusing the kids. It even says at the top that gender is one of those things that everyone thinks they understand, but most people don't. Gender isn't binary. It's not either or. In many cases, it's both and. A bit of this, a dash of that. This tasty guide is meant to be an appetizer to help you understand gender. So anyways, they start off really young promoting this to kids. This is the gender identity slides that were shown to my son at Davis High School. And I know because I sat in the classroom next to the principal, so I could actually see for myself what the kids are being taught. Not only Davis, but this is adopted curriculum throughout California. So the slide here, and they won't make this available, right? They'll give you a handout, but you won't really see the slides in the video. It shows the spectrum. And in the middle, there's genderqueer, transgender, trans, and then on either side, there's man and woman. One of the slides that was shown to my son shows a pregnant man. There's two slides actually were shown. They both showed a woman who's had a radical mastectomy. You can see the scar there. They call this top surgery. And this is Thomas Beatty, proof that men can get pregnant. So right here you can see here too, it says that trans is the umbrella term for people whose bodies at birth doesn't match the way they feel inside. Some trans people choose to take hormones and or have gender affirming surgeries. So this is 8th and 9th grade health curriculum here in California. Here's a list of the different terminology used in my son's classroom. This is from his principal. Real quickly, there's trans, genderqueer, gender fluid, genderless, agender, bigender, trigender, non-binary, third person categories, two-spirited people. So, you know, there's 13 different genders is what I counted that kids are learning. So how does this impact CIF, right? So if we've got high school sports that tell kids they can pick what gender they are, and it might not match what their body is, where would they fall in the categories of CIF sports? Because right now we have boys sports and we have girls sports. So in the girls category, we would typically have the trans, the genderqueer, the gender fluid, the agender, the bigender, the trigender in the girls team. In the boys team, it's usually just the boys. And you know why? It's because if you were a girl who's decided you're transgender, you're not going to be able to compete with the boys. And this is what really upsets me, is because you see girls dropping out of high school sports by the time they're in 9th grade, because all of a sudden they realize, if I'm going to be my authentic, true trans self, I can't play sports anymore because I'm not going to be, you know, winning medals or even making, you know, a JV team. You know, a girl who can be top varsity in track and field, she's not going to make a JV boys team. So we're losing girls in sports, and that just makes me sad. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about CIF overview and the toolkit. CIF is, we've got 14 sections across California. It's made up of 750,000 athletes, including 350,000 girls. I did a check on every high school, not every, there's 8,000 high schools, but I did check on maybe 50, 60 different high school websites. They all have the gender inclusivity toolkit listed. So just go onto your high school page, look up athletics, and then you'll find this toolkit that's on every single high school page. What they tell here, this is only one paragraph, is how they describe CIF participation in the bylaws. It says all students should have the opportunity to participate in CIF activities in a manner that is consistent with their gender identity, irrespective of the gender listed on a student's record. So all it takes is self-ID. You decide you have a different gender than what's shown on your school record or your birth certificate, and you can play on the other team. So the history of it and what does it tell girls? Real quickly, I did a public records request, so I do understand where this came from. This gender inclusivity toolkit came from Washington State. This is the person who actually wrote the gender inclusivity toolkit. That is a woman. That's a woman. This is what she says. While the inclusion of gender diverse K-12 student athletes on sport teams may initially feel unfamiliar, even a bit intimidating, for coaches and PE teachers, the practical step to do so proved to be something quite different. So your hesitancy can turn into confidence, apprehension turns into excitement, the positive outcomes that come about provide all the strong sense of accomplishment. It's a win-win for everyone. So Ada Kay is a woman. She wrote this book called The Trans Children's Today in Schools. They have this whole business of helping parents transition their kids. So this is where it came from. It came from Washington State through a trans activist. How do we implement the gender inclusive policies. What it's taking away from the girls is their competition, their free speech, their safety, and their reality. This question here says, how do you onboard trans athletes? It's one of the first pages in the book. It says here, just this one part, what you want to do is you want to enlist the assistance of one of the team captains or a student leader on the team who can help welcome this new transgender athlete onto the team. So it's telling coaches, find that girl who's looked to as a leader and make sure they model for the other girls how you bring a boy onto your team. And it says there is more to sports than just playing the game. The sense of belonging and camaraderie is high up on the list for any student. So don't worry about competition anymore. It's more about camaraderie. And this is one of my favorites, is the use of pronouns. If I see pronouns on your email, I'll still try to read it, but usually it means I don't. Anyways. So this is it, right? How do we address pronoun change requests? Everyone should use the pronoun as student request. It used to be very rare for someone to request a different pronoun. Today, it's much more commonplace. Conceptually, it's a very easy switch to make. The most common pronouns are she, her, he, him, and they, them. In practice, it can be challenging and awkward for somebody we've known for a long time. Anyways, they basically are telling the kids, the girls on the team, that if someone comes on your team, they've got different pronouns, it's up to you to change your speech. And if you don't, then you're the one who's being rude. So it's compelled speech, lying with what you see with your eyes and how you speak. This is every high school in California. If a transgender athlete, the question is, what restroom and locker room should a trans or other gender student use? The student should use a facility that most closely aligns with their gender identity. And it says, a trans athlete in general will opt for the boys' room if they're a trans boy, and the girls' room if they're a trans girl. All it says is make them comfortable. It's up to them to choose which locker room they want to use. I should just add too, not many people know this, but in CIF, you can change from one season to the next. So you can play boys tennis in the spring, or let's say, boys tennis in the spring, and then switch to girls volleyball in the fall. Anyways, you can flip-flop back and forth between seasons and what gender you want to play, what team you want to play on, which locker room you want to use. And it's, how you feel that day, that season. I'm going to go ahead and let Allie go, but I just want to encourage everyone. I did put the curriculum back there. I'm going to leave a copy of this gender inclusivity toolkit. I've got all kinds of information about library books, school curriculum, what's happening in our schools. And, I just want to say we've just got to do what we can to help our kids know that they're being lied to and that there's no child that's born in the wrong body. And this idea that you can play sports as a different gender, that doesn't make sense. So here's Allie.
Hello, my name is Allie Snyder, and I am a mother with 2 children who used to attend school here in Davis. I will discuss the dangers inherent in eradicating basic safeguarding in service to an ideology. But first, a brief introduction. I became active in this movement in the fall of 2022. My sons, aged 10 and 12 at the time, were both asked by multiple teachers for their pronouns on the first day of school. This resulted in conversations with principals and teachers, and later with comments at our school board meetings. At the time, I was also working with a man who called himself a woman. This man would make complaints against women if they had distressed facial expressions when he was in the restroom with them. I was cautioned for having a woman definition sticker on my water bottle and told it could be construed as an intentional act of disrespect. I was subsequently let go from my work for refusing to stay silent regarding the harms of gender ideology. I then had the opportunity to attend Kelly J. Keene's Let Women Speak free speech event in San Francisco, where I became inspired to speak out in defense of women's rights. I have since been able to meet and work with more and more incredible women and men, including Beth, Bourne, and those on the panel, and others in this room right now, all working so hard to push back against the hostile takeover of our humanity. I'm going to begin by reading a post from a woman who goes by the handle Janice Anna on X. The following are her words. It boggles my mind that after decades of being told not to walk alone at night, lock your doors, don't get into an elevator alone with a strange man, be careful of stairways, watch your drink, carry your keys in your hand, don't go into the park at night, don't go walking or jogging with headphones, don't go into the woods alone, close your windows, check the back seat of your car before getting in, avoid getting too close to vans, walk with a purpose, don't sit in your car at the mall, be constantly on alert, don't answer the door to strangers, don't hitchhike, be careful what you wear, take a self-defense class, be prepared to scream fire, don't get in a car with a stranger. After all these warnings, we are now told men in dresses won't hurt you, stop being a bigot, and strip down in the change room while they're there. They have the right to look at you. If you have a problem with that, that's your problem. Stop being a fearmonger. Shut up and accept it, Nazi. So, we have evolved over billions of years as a sexually dimorphic species. We have inherited billions of years of awareness and instinct to recognize sex. As females in our species, women and girls inherit a special awareness regarding the extra risk males pose to us. Over the millennia, this instinct has served us well, and it is this instinct that informed the known cautions listed in Anna's post. Gender ideology, a quasi-religious, techno-medical takeover of our sex-based humanity, has now been mandated by every institution in our society. Women and girls are being forced to give up our hard-won single-sex spaces to validate the feelings of men and boys who have declared a gender identity. No consideration is given to women and girls' safety, privacy, and dignity, as we are told their identities make these men and boys extra vulnerable. But this is not the case, and we do not need to rely on theory to show the risk posed to women and girls. Recent data from the UK Ministry of Justice confirms 99% of rapists are male, and 88% of those raped are female. There is no evidence the risk of sexual violence decreases when a male declares he identifies as female. The CIF's Gender Diverse Youth Sport Inclusivity Toolkit shows an awareness of this risk. What if a boy decides to falsely identify as a girl in order to participate on girls' teams or gain access to the girls' locker room? The deceptive behavior of one student should never be identified as a reason to discriminate against gender diverse students. So they say proactive measures can be taken, but they give no guidance as to what those measures are, and they can't, because in the words of the zealots who promote them, these identities can be fluid, they can change over time, and they're really only known to the individual. There's literally no way to determine sincerity or motivation. Now combine that awareness of this risk with schools and libraries who are making intentional efforts to break children's boundaries and expose them to highly sexualized materials way before they're developmentally prepared to handle them. This Book is Gay is in the Holmes Junior High Library here in the Davis School District. My son saw it when he was 12 years old. It not only provides step-by-step instructions to children on how to get on to sex apps online, it also teaches them how to perform sex acts in explicit language targeting children. Additionally, it encourages porn use, instructing children to watch it, calling it fine and fun, and that they can take ideas from it. My copy of the book is actually on that back table if you want to take a look at it. I go with it, travels with me everywhere now. This is actually one of the many books, many hypersexualized books, explicitly defended on a so-called banned book list by Governor Newsom, Tony Thurmond, and Attorney General Rob Bonta. Between the overwhelming effort to sexualize children, their early access to violent porn, and the complete annihilation of even the most basic safeguarding measures, we are seeing unprecedented levels of rape between younger and younger children. This is from an article, a recent article, February, Is Violent Porn Making Girls Identify as Transgender? This interest is not necessarily organic. An investigation released in December revealed that Pornhub actively pushes gay and transgender porn to help kids find their kink and shape sexual attitudes. I just lost my, oh, there's back. The evidence that digital pornography plays a key role in metastasizing sexual identities and proclivities is overwhelming. There is another very important aspect to the porn to transgender pipeline that has been largely ignored. For millions of young people, masculinity and femininity are being defined by online pornography with profound and ugly consequences. Porn addiction is now ubiquitous among young people, and a generation has grown up with their view of sexuality shaped by the extreme and violent content found on major porn sites such as Pornhub. An increasingly toxic sexual environment in which sexual violence has been normalized has been the result. A 2019 study from the Archives of Sexual Behavior, for example, found that teenage boys exposed to violent pornography are 2 to 3 times more likely to victimize girls. Young girls now believe that choking and anal sex is a normal part of sex. Choking. So I'm going to share some excerpts from recent articles showing the disastrous consequences from the erosion of safeguarding and the encouragement of men and boys into single-sex spaces set aside for women and girls. These examples are distressing, but they are real and they must be acknowledged so we can reinstate basic safeguarding measures. A $9 million lawsuit was filed on a 3rd grade girl's behalf after alleged rape by classmates at school. In Portland, Oregon, lawyers for an 11-year-old girl filed a $9 million lawsuit against Portland Public Schools, alleging the district and an after-school program failed to protect the then 3rd grader from ongoing sexual harassment, culminating in the 9-year-old's rape by 2 male students in a school bathroom. They failed at every juncture. Loudoun County mishandled bathroom sex assault, grand jury finds. Between May and October of 2021, the same male high school student allegedly sexually assaulted 2 females in the Loudoun County Public School District. The first incident happened in the girls' bathroom at Stonebridge High School, where the gender-fluid perpetrator, who was wearing a skirt at the time, allegedly sodomized a 9th grade girl. Teen boy avoids jail after rape of 12-year-old in Kidlington. The 16-year-old, who cannot be named for legal reasons, was found guilty earlier this year of raping a girl at Exeter Park in June of 2021 when he was 13 years of age. During the trial, the jury heard the girl, whom the Oxford Mail has decided not to name, has since died. A victim impact statement written by the girl's father was read out before sentencing. What he did to her changed her life. I tried to speak to her about what happened, but she struggled to open up. She started listening to emotional music and watching shows about suicide. She began to self-harm 3 months after the incident. Addressing the boy, Judge Lamb said, "I'm not sure it's right to say that you were selfish, but you were not kind. And you need to understand that women and girls need to be treated with respect and care." Paula was referenced earlier. Paula Scanlon shares powerful testimony about surviving sexual assault and having to share a locker room with Liar Thomas 18 times per week. I know of women with sexual trauma who are adversely impacted by having biological males in their locker room without consent, Scanlon continued. I know this because I am one of these women. I was sexually assaulted on June 3rd of 2016. I was only 16. While there have been a lot of notions that this is such a minority group of people. This one transgender athlete, Lyra Thomas, affected hundreds of girls. Scanlon told the committee, my words, not hers. There were hundreds of girls at the NCAA championship in tears over the situation, being bumped out of their spots in competition, failing to qualify for a meet, or having to change in the locker room next to a 6'4" biological male. I highly encourage you all to follow Redux Mag if you're not already. These women are exceptionally dedicated and thorough journalists, highlighting the impacts of the erosion of women's sex-based rights. They not only follow the sport event, they also, they're just amazing. I really recommend you follow them to learn all the various impacts that the transgender cult is having on women's rights. So in conclusion, it is not the responsibility of women to protect men from other men. It is not the responsibility of girls to protect boys from other boys. Real inclusivity is men and boys making room in their own spaces for effeminate men and boys. They must advocate for a safer environment consistent with their sex, not their feelings. It is also not for any fringe group to give away the rights of others to the safety, privacy, and dignity single-sex spaces provides, and this goes for both women and men's spaces. However, it is our responsibility as adults to protect our children, both girls and boys. Protect their boundaries. Stand up and speak out for their rights. First and foremost, start with your own children. Have age-appropriate conversations early and often. Reinforce their instincts and awareness around biological sex. Remind your children it is impossible to be born in the wrong body, and that what they like or dislike cannot make them more or less a member of the sex class to which they were born. Monitor and restrict their online access and warn them of the dangers of online porn. Remind your girls to pay attention to their intuition. Help them understand what healthy boundaries are and to speak out when something makes them uncomfortable. Make sure they know they have your support if any school official or peer attempts to force them to comply with any aspect of the gender cult. Teach them the dangers of being compelled to lie. Because if we allow an entire generation to become unmoored from the biological reality of our species, and we simultaneously compel them to lie, our humanity is lost. Thank you.
Can we just give another hand to all the speakers? And I know there's a ton of you in the room that have put in a lot of work to help make this event happen, to help make similar events happen, and just do so much to protect women and girls in sports. But can we just give a big hand to Beth Bourne and everything? I hope you just know how loved and appreciated you are in this community, and you truly are. But take a deep breath. That was a lot of information. The goal of that was ultimately so you guys can be equipped with the facts, the stats, how this happened, how we can fight back, what CIF is doing. But at the end of the day, remember the simple argument is just men don't belong in women's sports.
Yeah.
And it's common sense. And it's pretty cool that we get to say that and not get kicked out of places anymore. But with that, we have some time left for some Q&A. So what we'll do is, if you have any questions, you're going to line up over here, and you can ask them to a specific speaker or just in general. but I know this can be, if you just want to figure out how do I best talk to people about this, whatever your question is, no question is a dumb question, just make sure it is a question.
Hi there, thank you all for being here. I have a question actually about the sporting bodies, the various sporting organizations, and if you had any insight about, like, are there particular sporting bodies, either national or international, that you think have been either particularly captured or particularly not captured? And if so, why you think it is that certain orgs are more or less captured than others on that sporting organization?
Well, and if anyone else wants to speak on this, but just we.
Let's let Kim speak.
Oh, she's still on?
Yeah, Kim's on, yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Let me
Bring her up
bring her up.
on video, yeah.
Yeah, Kim, just one quick second here. Okay, we've got you on, Kim. Oh.
We lost your audio. Go down to the lower right.
Oh, yeah, we've got you. Okay, Kim, try.
No,
No, she wasn't.
no, she wasn't. Click that, there you go.
Volume?
What about Tom?
I know.
We were not.
Go right there, yeah. Click on that. And slide it, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So it's up there.
Yeah, maybe when
Kim,
we,
talk.
maybe we put the microphone into the room. Shoot. Yeah, Kim, sorry. We heard you so well during
Hold
the
on.
presentation.
Let me try something.
Did you text your answer?
Stand by.
You got a tech guy.
Okay, talk now. Mic check.
What about when you
Okay.
screen across, it says mute at the top of her screen?
That mutes her.
I think it's when they set up the.
No, we had it working.
Yeah, it was working. Just a second here.
The top one is that's.
Okay, try that. Mic check. Let's see.
Well, we can do, if you have another question, we can do the next question, and then we'll hop back to this one if they can get Kim working, if that works.
Yeah, put her on the, yeah. Call it in to Beth.
Oh, you know what, then let me get the mic back into the mic.
Creative.
And let's get the microphone.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
feedback, this is fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
So for the question, if I want to make sure I understood, the question was why are some governing bodies better than others and what makes some particularly captured, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the larger governing bodies that are more prevalent, like World Athletics, World Aquatics, UCI now in cycling, those governing bodies have undergone a couple years of systemic review. And they're in a better place than the smaller governing bodies. So we have a couple like fencing in particular is really captured. Some of the national governing bodies in the US are in really bad shape because they are, I hear myself talking back.
Let me see if I can,
Keep going.
I'll mute it on this side.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The governing bodies in the US are right now feeling like they have their hands tied in some instances just because they don't legally understand how they can be protected. Just crazy, but there are several like US Rowing, USA Fencing that are run by actual serious trans activists and have placed people in positions where it's difficult to get through to them. So that's why the Title IX legislation, or the Title IX legal challenge that we have going on right now is super important because it would set a legal precedent that, yes, we can have separate sporting categories. Basically what we all thought we had all along. And that will help ripple down and give legal cover to the different governing bodies in the US. But we definitely have a long haul in front of us because until we get the IOC or the USOPC, the overseeing larger bodies, by that I mean International Olympic Committee or US Olympic and Paralympic Committee, to actually take a stance and protect their female athletes, we're going to have to pick the governing bodies off one by one. But the more captured ones are captured because they have got leadership in place that are actively defending the rights of men, and the larger governing bodies that have a little more visibility and have suffered from this, like track and field and so forth, and swimming are a little more ahead of the game because they have been doing years-long reviews. And actually had some cases in the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland, and those rule changes are trickling down to national governing bodies.
Thanks, Kim.
Perfect. Maybe we can just leave her on the phone. So, also, if you didn't see, NAIA, one of the governing bodies of college sports, they just ruled 25-0, I believe was the number, that they're going to protect female sports. So.
Okay. So this question is similar to the question that was just presented, but it is more about cycling. So I think maybe Richard would be appropriate, or Kim as well. And my question is that as recently as 2 to 3 years ago, there seemed to be male cyclists that were winning in national and international cycling events throughout the world in much greater numbers than any other sport. And so why cycling in particular? You know, I know you talked about capture of sports in general, but why cycling in particular? You know, what is it about the sport of cycling? Is it because there's trans identifying people in positions of power? Or, you know, is there something about cycling in particular that means that more trans-identifying people are going to participate in that? I find that kind of an interesting question.
Thank you for the question, Cynthia. I'm going to generically say this so that I don't point the finger at any single individual. My sport is full of sociopaths. It's that simple. If you look at soccer, people will fake an injury. If you look at cycling, they will crash themselves up and their last breath on earth will be put me back on my bike. I have seen exploded hearts. I've seen aneurysms. I've seen, if you look at the hero movie from the 80s, American Flyers, I died of an aneurysm. Okay, it's literally like that. So the will and the passion for surpassing your own performance as well as the performance of others. This is going on right now with a common friend of ours who's putting on an event down in Redlands. He's a wonderful, passionate cyclist, but he does not have that 1% edge to basically commit himself to death for victory. That's the ground.
Okay, so I think I'm actually the most qualified to answer this question. I was a collegiate runner at Cal Poly. I raced track and cross country. I got injured. I switched to cycling. I was on the women's national collegiate cycling team for Cal Poly. In the time trial, we did the road race and the criterium. I was on a bike racing team. And I'll tell you this about men who bike race, they are super smart, and many of them are engineers. And when you get really smart people, and then you see this in girls too, I might say they're even on the autism spectrum, so they might even be Asperger's-ish, right? That's how you get into cycling. You're very mechanically inclined. You might be an introvert, so team sports are harder for you. You like everything about cycling. It's technical. It's, you know, it's you and you're a machine. And what really upsets me is so many of the kids here in Davis, California, who are identifying as transgender are the quirky, smart, sensitive, gifted, creative, kind kids, right? So it breaks my heart when I see these, you know, boys who are competing in collegiate bike racing and they're winning in the transgender category, because that boy could be my son, right? And these are boys that they're becoming trans women because they're not as, you know, masculine and buff as the guys who played football and basketball at their high school. They picked cycling, they picked fencing, they picked rock climbing because they're not these big buff, you know, jockey guys, right? And so just my heart breaks for these younger boys and men who get into this trans cult because they don't fit in as being, you know, your typical guy, but that doesn't mean they're still not a boy or a man, right? Just because you're super smart and quirky doesn't make you a woman. So that's why I think cycling is there's over 70 cyclists racing right now, male cyclists racing as women. And, you know, I think Fort Collins, it was, the cyclocross collegiate championship was won by a boy who identifies as a girl. And it makes sense. I loved being around cyclists because they're super smart and they're very quirky. And anyways, I feel for that sport. It's really hard.
Hello, first I just want to state that I'm Tom Bowe. I'm running for the California Senate District 3, and I do have a question for Beth. But before that, I want to give credit where credit is due. She is the one who introduced me to what's going on with our sex education, particularly with the elementary age students. And God bless her for that. Another friend of mine, Mike sitting in the back, he is one who actually introduced me more to the topic of what's going on here today, and has invited me to other events that provided me with a lot of enlightenment. And frankly, I think it's ridiculous that women should have to defend themselves in this position against men in women's sports. Okay, but my question to you, Beth, actually is, and because I've never had an opportunity to ask you this, even though we've crossed paths a few times, is at this point, I know you have found this in our school, in our libraries and stuff. Have you actually been able to get your hands on any of the actual curriculum they've been teaching to the 5th graders and how far they've gone? Because I have requested it and have not received it myself yet. Because if I'm elected, that's changing. We're going to phone with that one.
So really quickly, when I did submit a public records request to Davis Joint Unified School District, they said to me that the health curriculum was copyrighted. So you can't get it from Davis schools. But if you Google it, you can find it because other school districts have put it online. So you could just search for health-connected puberty talk curriculum, and you'll see the slides that basically tell kids that, you know, your gender could be different than your biological sex, that the trusted adult in your life may not be your parent, it may be a coach, a teacher, a babysitter, a neighbor, an uncle. You know, it breaks down the family unit. It breaks down the trust between a child and the parent. It does say too that a teacher can transition a child at school with a new name, preferred pronouns, and opposite gender identity without telling the parents. If the child says, please keep it a secret here at school. So thanks for asking the question. So I've got some of the curriculum back there, but you can also find it. Just look online and I can help you find it.
What was your name again? What are you running for?
I'm Tom Bowe, running for California State Senate District 3, which includes YOLO County.
All right, lawyer has to answer.
He hasn't said enough. You won the primary over 4 other people. He wasn't supposed to have done that. He did it. Now he needs help to run.
And that's happening all over our state. You know, very unsuspecting people are running for office and winning because both lefties and righties are done with all this garbage. We're joining forces, and the Democrats do not like that other Democrats are joining forces with Republicans, but it makes me really giddy. It also makes me a little bit happy because, you know, as I was here last time, lawyers like to sue. And it is not true that you cannot get the school curriculum because of copyright. That's a big fat lie. They said that to me, and I just said, I'm a lawyer, and they said, okay, right here. So just tell them, that's not the law. You have to provide it to me, and there are lawyers out there who love to file lawsuits related to public records requests, because again, the lawyers get their attorney's fees, just like they did in the First Amendment. So it's like no skin off their back, they make money off of it. And so if the school ever tells you that you can't look at the curriculum, oh, do you have a child at our school? Are you even in my district? That's a lie. Anyone in the state of California can get the school curriculum.
So, Beth, you've spoken about younger and younger ages being exposed to being prepped for accepting gender ideology. And my question is, how low are they going to go in terms of targeting children? I heard something just last week that was so shocking, and I'm so glad I get to ask you this question now. I was sitting out on my porch of my condo community. I could overhear my neighbor who started up a family daycare, kids 2 to 4 years old. She's reading from a book clearly intended for a very young age group about the different kinds of love. You can love your friends, you can love your siblings, you can love your parents. And when your parents love each other, that's called romantic love, and you might see them kissing. Romantic love could also be between two men, and that's called gay, or two women, and that's called lesbian. But every child should feel safe in their home. Some homes are not safe for children because the parents don't understand about the different kinds of love.
Yeah.
So this woman, I wasn't surprised, she's very woke. It's a private daycare, but it wouldn't be that hard for an activist to get a list of all the private daycares in the county and send the materials. What are we to think? Was this just a one-off? This woman, thought this up herself, or is she being, is she being targeted by trans organizations to implement this as a private?
Fight over it. I'm gonna let Erin answer it, but I do want to say that the Davis School District did host a speaker last year for the entire school district. Children 12 and up were invited. The author was Rachel Pepper. Her book was called The Transgender Child. And if you listen to her, the talk that was done, and Allie's bringing up the book, Rachel Pepper says that children as young as 2 will know that they're transgender, and they will express that to their parents. So starting, at 1, 2 years old, the child might pull off their onesie to let you know they're not comfortable. Anyway, they're dropping it down to almost the age of an infant or a child to let you know they're transgender.
Yeah, and I want to just go on with that onesie statement, the unbuttoning of the onesie. So a 2-year-old who unbuttons their onesie and just walks around with it, that's gender communicating, and that came from Jazz Jennings. Yeah, no, and that's Diane Erin staff at UCSF. A little girl who pulls out her barrettes too is also, communicating. I don't know what it means when you throw your gloves off or your jacket on the floor, but I'm sure it means you're trans. But here's how it goes. It is at TK, it is at it is at nursery school, it is everywhere, it is ubiquitous. There's a group called Transnation. It's 2 very woke moms. They happen to be married to very wealthy men, or maybe they are very wealthy themselves. They're out of LA. They donate all these books to these schools. They pick on the poorest schools in our state. It's what they do. They went to Fresno and they donated 1,000 trans kids books, and they're in pretty colors and purple, and then the teachers hide them also. They also stick them behind their desks. They don't leave them out. They do it at the circle time on the rug, make it really, really cute. Sometimes it's cool. The principal will come in, and Anybody who is against this, I just have to put a plug in for Wednesday. Wednesday is really important. Wednesday in the Capitol, there is a bill, finally a Republican is trying to push a bill to get obscenity out of our grades 8th and below. That's it. It is being fought by the ACLU, Equity California. The hearing is on Wednesday. It's at 9 o'clock. We need to show up and support this bill. It's going to die. It's going to die on Wednesday. But if there's only 5 of us there, this continues and continues and continues. We need to come up. I know it's painful. I drive 2.5 hours each way for 2 minutes. You have to show up on Wednesday and support this bill. And because, we'll be reading from these books, these books. So please on Wednesday, show up.
All right, I have a question right after Beth has a question. Go ahead.
This is for Kim and/or Erin, whoever can answer it. The lawsuit that's happening right now that Icons filed, what court is that in? And let's say they win, I guess it'll be appealed. Where does it go then? So I just kind of wanted to know some more details about the status of that suit, where it is.
We'll make it work.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. It's filed in the 11th Circuit Court in Georgia. So we are waiting for the response from the NCAA right now. And if it gets the 11th Circuit goes up, the Circuit Court's in court after that, but we will see how it unfolds. There's not a whole lot to update you on at this point, other than we're waiting for the response from the NCAA. We hope that it goes to court here in the fall, and that the girls that have the women that have been so courageous to file it get their day in court sooner rather than later. It should happen within this calendar year, was our expectation. Any other? But it's under the 11th Circuit. I don't think it starts there. I think it's the district court first, if I'm not mistaken.
District court. I'm gonna guess, at a few things, but it will be at the district court, and there may be what is called an injunction, so that can have an early ruling on whether they must make boys leave the girls' sports or not. And that's a big indicator of what the court is going to do ultimately. It will be appealed, I guarantee you. The only way all of this stuff gets out and this ends is really with the Supremes. And thus far, the Supremes have been kicking the can down the road. They don't want to deal with this issue, but they're going to have to, because there is a perfect storm actually on our benefit with the CAS report that just came out, and the WPATH files. But it's going to be a couple of years, folks, so we need to keep pushing forward and have other districts file lawsuits too, because we have to have competing rulings to get to the Supremes.
And then I just want to add to that, for that lawsuit, there's obviously, I think it's 16 female athletes that are on it. You guys are all familiar with Riley Gaines. One of the other ones that's just a really interesting story to check out is Kylie Allen. She's a dear friend of mine, and she also had to compete against, like Allie said, Liar Thomas. I like that new little line. And so if you look at Kylie Allen, she has won award after award after award, like is a phenomenal swimmer, amazing. Change in a janitor's closet because she didn't want to change next to a man. It's a really powerful story. It's one that needs to be shared, so definitely go look her up. She's one of the athletes on the lawsuit.
It's not really a question, but it was kind of disturbing this morning on Kansas. The governor just vetoed a couple of bills, I think, related to banning gender affirming care for minors. She vetoed it. I don't know if they can override the veto. And Hochul in New York is pushing this to be implemented as well. So sure, there's some good news and bad news, and this is part of the bad news, I guess, that's still happening. Where I don't know what the rest of the states are going to do that have not declared one way or the other. Does anybody know?
There are, I think, 23 states at the moment that have bans on so-called sex changes on kids. So we're at 23. Most of those are in litigation. None of the blue states obviously have done, and that's where our ballot initiative is so important because we could do it by ballot. Colorado is also trying to do it by ballot, and so is Illinois. So we just, I mean, it's going to be lawfare. It's really going to be the courts that are ultimately going to decide this. And like I said, it's a long haul. Long haul.
How's the ballot initiative doing?
It's doing well. We have our lawsuit on next Friday, so hopefully I win that. Fingers crossed. I don't know what our count is. I do know that we're getting now banker boxes of signed petitions. But on the other end, I just got a couple of emails with the post office not delivering the signatures to our offices, which is really scary. Like, that's how big this is.
Sorry, that happened to me. I sent in an envelope and it got returned. That is why it's just really important to tell people to put their return address on it, because it did come back to me and I was able to send it again. It was just an envelope. This was about a month ago. Sorry.
Put enough postage on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary, and I guess that happened with Prop 47 also. But yeah, that's how big this is. This is the cabal. Like, we're in a fight for humanity. Who said that? Allie.
All right, well, thank you guys all for coming. We are gonna have time for.
One quick last question.
Can we sign the petition here today?
Yes.
Up front at the table?
Yeah.
I have it in my card.
I have some in my.
Oh, yeah, Pat, final question.
Okay, this will be the final one.
I know it's taking too long. I'll be with you.
Can you hear me? Okay. My question for the panel and everyone here is, we're talking to ourselves. We all agree this is just wildly illogical. Why is it so successful? How do you get principals? My sons who are officers in the Navy are getting pronoun teaching. Every government agency is doing it. This is a wildly successful program. This blind adherence to the party, whatever party it is, I don't recognize it as a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian. Nobody should recognize it. Why is it so successful? It's completely illogical.
That's kind of what I was gonna ask too, like, what happened to safeguarding for children and women? What happened?
Allie?
So I think we're looking at a decades-long propaganda campaign. It's what I like to call the love child between big pervert and big pharma. So it is a concerted effort from billionaire autogynephiles like Martine Rothblatt and Jennifer Pritzker and various others who have been developing this propaganda to target every level of our society for decades. And I highly recommend everybody follow an investigative journalist named Jennifer Billick, because it's all about the money. You follow the money, and like she says, the money doesn't lie. And it's out there in the open, and they talk about it. They're not trying to hide the overall agenda, which is a techno-medical takeover of our reproductive sex. It is a commodification of our biology. This is a huge industry that can make a lot of money and is making a lot of money. It's creating generations of children who won't be able to reproduce on their own. It is making money not only on the front end by the hormones and the puberty blockers, which we should not call puberty blockers. These are prostate cancer drugs being given to children to interrupt their puberty. But it's also making money on the back end. So they're all invested in surrogacy. They're all invested in IVF. They're making money off of that as well. Again, because we're going to have generations of humans who won't be able to reproduce on their own. So again, follow Jennifer Billick. She writes a blog called the 11th Hour Blog. That's where I get my information on from why this is happening. But how it's been so effective is because they've been pumping millions of dollars into every strata of our society for decades. This has been going on for a lot longer than most people realize, certainly longer than I ever realized.
Allie, could you include the fact they've been using public dollars? They've been using our public institutions.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. Because our public institutions, well, okay, so here's a little example of how that works, right? So Beth talked earlier about, and I think actually Erin, the California Healthy Kids surveys, right? These are surveys that are administered to children in the Davis School District twice a year in the fall and in the spring. They're confidential surveys. Parents can't easily see the questions that are being asked of the children. They are being asked, I think the second, or Beth can tell me, but the third or fourth question is something like, do you identify as transgender? Are you non-binary? So children are being asked these really confidential questions twice a year, starting in the 5th grade, all the way through their senior year. And these surveys are not mandated yet, although the state does want to make them mandated. But here in the Davis School District, and in a lot of the districts that have adopted these surveys, they are tied to funding for the tobacco prevention program. So cash-strapped school districts are being given money if they do this tobacco prevention plan. And part of that plan is they have to administer these surveys. Now, the California Education Code says that parents have to give explicit consent if their children are asked about a variety of things in their home, including their sexuality and ethnicity and gender identity, those things. So parents do have to give consent, but they're never told what they're actually consenting to. So in the enrollment program, you'll be asked, do you consent to your children taking climate surveys? They don't even tell you exactly what the surveys are on the actual registration form. But again, they never tell you what the questions are. So you cannot consent to something that you aren't actually informed about. There's no informed consent when you're not informed of what you're signing. But that is an example of how public funds are being used and tied to things in this kind of backdoor manner.
Well, thank you all for coming. This was fun to get to do round 2 and actually, yeah, a little rematch. But now there's just time for a little bit of a reception. So if you guys want to have some of the snacks over there, hang out, get to know each other, and figure out how we're going to keep pushing on this fight.
Oh, we have 2 tables. Beth brought books, right? So we have books in the back that are, designed to break children's boundaries. And then we have books on the right-hand side, which are books that are great resources.
And we have 20 minutes for a reception, so thank you everyone for coming.
Oh, yeah.